What is the biggest, most blatant misconception of Christianity? Or modern
that people don't know? Like
yes.
So a lot. Okay, this is a big one. The manuscript traditions. So a lot of people don't know that Mark is the oldest gospel. People think it's Matthew because in the open up the Bible, Matthew's the first gospel. Then
right.
Mark is the oldest. A lot of people don't know most of the gospels are dated to, they'll say first century, but it's probably late first to the second century where the gospel starts showing up in the sources. Mm-hmm. But this is a crazy thing. In Mark, which is the oldest gospel, mm-hmm. there's no mention of Joseph as Jesus' father. Before that, Paul was the oldest text. Paul never mentions Joseph. So the first time Joseph gets mentioned in any of the sources is in Matthew's gospel, which is like 85 to 95 AD. But even worse than that, the scene in Mark where Jesus returns from the dead and shows the disciples that he's risen, mm-hmm. that's not in the oldest manuscripts. In the oldest manuscripts, the ones that are dated to like the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century, he doesn't come back. It literally ends tragically with the women weeping at the tomb. And the angels tell the women that he's risen, but they don't ever see him. He doesn't have to come back. Then when in the manuscript tradition, after the 5th century is when you start seeing an extra 21 verses get added to the Bible about Jesus coming back and saying, hey, look, I'm risen.
No way.
And it probably has to do with Celsus and Porphyry, these early, they call them pagan. They're not really pagans. They're like Platonist mm-hmm. writers who are very critical of Christianity. One of the things Celsus says, this is a book from the 2nd century against the Christians, where he even says, how do you even know he rose? All you're going off is just 2 women that said they met an angel? What? And you think this is the Son of God? I'm not believing this. So, and we know that this was a big deal to the Christians because Irenaeus, about a couple decades later, had to write a whole book addressing Celsus. It was called Against Celsus. Mm. So Celsus was like going after these Christians, and he was whooping their asses. I've bleeped that part out.
Wow.
But like philosophical, like debating wise, he was beating them up pretty bad.
Right.
Which makes me think that's why they added those 21 verses and said, wait a minute. No, he did come back, and here's what actually happened. But if you can fact check me, whoever's watching this, mm-hmm. The last chapter of Mark, the last 21 verses in that last chapter do not show up in any of the manuscripts before the 5th century.
The last part of, but did you say Mark was the first one to write about it?
Mark's the first gospel.
Mark's the first gospel. And none of the manuscripts before that.
Yes.
Can you say that again?
Okay, so Mark being the first gospel,
right,
we have manuscripts of Mark, right. So the first actual Bible, church Bible, where it has the Old Testament plus the New Testament, is in the 4th century in 325 AD.
Okay.
Before that, it was all individual manuscripts. So you have Mark floating around by itself, Matthew floating around by itself.
Okay, got it.
And some people would put together their own little, like a guy named Marcion put together a New Testament where it was 7 epistles of Paul plus Luke mm-hmm. and maybe Acts, I think, but I can't remember. But Mark, the Gospel of Mark that was in circulation mm-hmm. before the 5th century only had those up till the last 21 verses. So if that's Mark right there, if you go to the last chapter,
we just lost Neal's audio, or I did at least.
Yeah, I meant to unmute my mic. I was on his.
Okay. Oh, okay, we'll just cut that part out.
This one goes all the way down to the 16. Does it go any further than that?
Yeah. Okay, so if you go down, this is Mark 16.
Yeah.
So if you go all the way down to the bottom, mm-hmm. where it says, keep going. All right, go up. So afterward, he appeared to the 11 themselves.
Yeah.
As they were reclining at the table, and he rebuked them. That's not in the oldest manuscripts. That's added. All of that stuff. And this is consensus. Any Bible scholar will agree with me on this. This is not some wild.
Is there a way to access online the original?
Yes, there are.
How can we see find the original?
Bart Ehrman is a textual critic. Dr. Bart Ehrman. This
Bart
is what
Ehrman.
he, yeah.
Okay.
And he has like the different manuscript traditions and the translations of them, what they say, what the variations are. And you could just like look up, like he'll point out that those last, so the last verse is 19 or 20 actually. It's all the way up until
Go up.
when you start seeing Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. That's the last verse of the oldest manuscripts.
And now when he rose,
Look, it says it right there. Some of the earliest manuscripts do not include 9 through 20.
No way.
I'm sorry. I said 21 verses. I'm sorry. It's 11 verses. My bad.
11. Okay.
Yeah, those last 11 verses.
They don't include 16:9
Yeah.
through 20.
And this is Bible.com that's saying that. This is not a crazy. This is not like some word.
So they don't include this one right here.
Yeah,
Now when
all
he
of that.
rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out
7 demons.
7 demons.
That's all added.
That's added.
And because people are criticizing and saying, "Wait a minute, how do you know this is even true? If all you're going off is they went to his tomb and he wasn't there, because that's how it ends. They go to his tomb, he's not there. Now, to be fair, in the Augustan period or the Flavian period, which is the 1st century,
right.
there was an ancient trope where if this is a big trope where a hero would die, like Hercules or something, and they would go to his tomb and his body was gone, and it meant that he rose to heaven. It was an ancient trope. So that whoever wrote Mark was basically saying this happened to Jesus too. So that is a common thing. If the body's disappeared, it means that angels rose him up to heaven. But if you're being critical, you would say, how do you know someone didn't steal the body? So they end up adding verses.
Right.
That's the earliest gospel. That's what it is.
That's wild,
Yeah.
man.